Hello and welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Like, Click, Share podcast with me, Darren Winter, and Gemma Walton. Hey, Gemma.
Hi, Darren. How are you doing?
Doing all right. Hot on the heels of...
sunny Spain.
I am for the moment. It's not that. It's brightening up. And well, I can't complain. It's warmer than it is in the UK at the moment. So
it's 7 degrees heat today. Yesterday was 13. So I put my coat on and then I had to take it off.
Wow.
But on Friday I went down for a Christmas night out down to Cambridge, and when I left it was -4.5, and when I got there it was +4.5. So they were all like, teeth chattering, and I was like, this is boiling for me.
Wow. I have to say, to be honest, it's up until last Friday, it's just rained like a torrent every single day, but I'm in southern Spain, and so yeah, it just rained every single day. But from Saturday onwards, we've had some sunshine, but temperatures like nothing being amazing, sort of like 13. So here, and then
toasty
today, yes, toasty, 16, 17, but better than -4.
Yeah, much better than -4.
Okay, well, with that behind us, we're kind of on the run up to sort of Christmas as we're recording this. So depending on when you're listening to this, it's as we're going into, the end of the year, looking ahead into January. We mentioned on the last podcast that we're going to talk about kind of the state of social media for now and into 2023, and a little bit about communities, because this has kind of all come about really, I suppose, really from Twitter and whatever the future is for that platform. But it's kind of had, I think, a few marketers thinking about the whole social media strategy a lot more than perhaps you would do normally at this time of the year. So kind of what is the kind of like future and the state of social media at the moment? Well, there's some really good information around at the moment, and Data Reportal. There's a link in the show notes. If you've never looked at Data Reportal before, they come out with a good sort of 2 or 3 times a year roundup of sort of digital media platforms. There's some interesting statistics in there. So the favourite social media platform, according to their survey, is WhatsApp at 16.2%. Which is really interesting. And, you know, our activity, we've done a lot more overseas activity in our business over the last 12 months. And I have to say, we've seen so much more activity on WhatsApp. So I suppose really it's interesting because we don't maybe associate WhatsApp being a social media platform, but it is. And then the other statistic I think was quite interesting for all the Facebook naysayers. Facebook is still the most used social media platform with 2.934 billion users. And then in second place is YouTube. So with 2.515 billion users. So what do you reckon of those statistics, Gemma? Is there anything surprising there for you?
I'm not surprised by that. I think Facebook's been the number one used channel for a number of years, even though people will tell you different. I know there's been a lot of comments over the recent years, and I've read a lot of stuff about the fact that reach is declining and people aren't getting what they need to from Facebook. I actually haven't seen that, and I haven't seen that on pages for people that I manage. You know, I've seen reach increase, I've seen more engagement. I am surprised that WhatsApp gets classed as a social media channel, because in my opinion it's not. It's a text messaging service or a messenger app that I know people do use for like adverts and stuff, but for me that's something that I would more use with my friends, you know, to share pictures, to share videos. So I am surprised by that, but I'm not in a way, because obviously it's owned by Facebook, who own Instagram, do you know what I mean? So the three are all connected, and I'm sure over the coming years, possibly even next year, you'll start to see, I think, more things kind of like merge together, if that makes sense, because now you're putting your WhatsApp information, if you want to, within your Facebook page, aren't you? Everything's all connected. I know you mentioned some stats there. I found a couple that as of 2023, there's 4.89 billion social media users in the world, which is up from 2.5 billion in 2017. So that's quite a considerable increase, I think, especially when you think that there's still quite a lot of people that don't necessarily have smartphones, don't communicate in that way. Some people don't want to use them. There are still people who prefer to use the very, very old style. I only want to be able to send a text message, not a picture. I only want to be able to make a phone call, so it's interesting. I think there's a lot of interesting reports out there. I know I've just been looking at a Hootsuite one and also one called Exploding Topics, which I'll drop the links in the chat for. But both of them say quite similar things. I don't know if you've come across anything similar. I jotted down a couple of things from Hootsuite that said in 2023, marketers have realised that they're going to have to stop cross-posting. So posting similar things across each channel, everything's going to have to be more and more relevant, which is obviously something that we've seen for a while. But I think we've talked about it on previous podcasts where we've said almost like each channel is almost becoming the same. They all look the same. They're almost all the same colour with the exception of TikTok and Instagram that are black and like a purpley colour. But TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, they're all blue. One of the other things was that social media will overtake search engine optimization as marketers work to build trust in social shopping. So
wow, that's fascinating.
I know that was one of the things that I looked at and I thought, right, that's interesting. But then it also said that customer service, more use of chatbots, keeping customers happy, and marketers were going to become more like customer service agents because people were going to want that instant communication, which again I think we've covered in previous podcasts. And the other one was that social marketing is now going to use networks across all of the marketing mix. So a bit like the old school days, the product, price, promotion, place, which there were 4, but I thought there were 7 or 8 now. So it was interesting when I read that. But I think we've talked about it before, that marketing's almost going to come complete circle again. People want authenticity. They want to know who's the face behind the brand. They want the realness. They don't want the polished content anymore. They want to know who that person is. Do I relate to them? Do I believe in the company? Do you know what I mean? Am I aligned with their values? Things like that. What do you think?
Yeah, but you're right on this. There's at least 7 Ps, probably a few more. So product, price, place, promotion, people, physical evidence. There's probably another 1 or 2 there that's kind of just missing. But I think, I suppose I've always been using socials across all of those anyway. So I think generally, if you're a good marketer, you do that anyway. So you're always going to have a call to action. You're always going to be talking about maybe a discount or a new sale, or you might be talking about a new team member or celebration or new shop opening or new product. So I think I would say probably a good majority of good quality marketers would be already doing that, even if they didn't know they were purposely doing it. Going back to your point about the SEO, initially, you might think, wow, that sounds a bit crazy. But having said that, I was out in Saudi earlier on in the summer, which is why we didn't record a podcast. So I was teaching a group or a class of students, so roughly about the ages of about sort of 23, 24, 25, a few outliers being like younger or maybe a little bit older. In technology sales. But it was interesting listening to them about how they use social media. So for them, Twitter was their top app, and it kind of is in Saudi. That's the most popular app. Facebook, much less so. But it was interesting to see how they used social media, and they used it as a search engine. So TikTok was another favorite out there. and then they just found their news and places to go, what was going on, all within those actual apps. And they found Google as a search engine quite confusing. So it's interesting listening to them about that. And around about the same time, there were some updates from Google talking about, I don't know if they've done it yet or going into, I think it's going to go into next year, 2023, about how they're going to be changing the search engine. So one of the things I've seen is they're going to get rid of the page numbers. So, you know, where we've got the page results, it goes 1 through to infinity. It will just become a never-ending scroll. So that's one of the first changes. So I suppose that imitates kind of the feeling that you get on socials where you're just scrolling through forever.
But not great for you on a mobile device, is it? If you
well, that's the thing, isn't it? So it's interesting to see, isn't it? Like whether they're trying to fight back and trying to now how they're trying to get that kind of like same feeling. And I think they're going to be doing a lot more kind of image-based sort of searching, and probably I would imagine linking that with video as well. And it's interesting with YouTube being the second most popular platform, and I know that we've said this year a lot about it, is that video is definitely here to stay. It's not going to go anywhere. So if you're not using video, you really do need to, because it's just important. It's going to become such a massive factor, and you can see certainly in Instagram this year, like when they kind of like launch Reels in going to kind of compete with TikTok. Again, if you're not posting sort of video content on Instagram, then generally you're not making the most of the platform, because that video is going to give you the biggest like return. And it's not that difficult now to create sort of video content, especially in apps like Canva. And I'm, you know, for Duco, we're, you know, for our own sort of business, that I'm not going to say we're the king of video, because we're not, you know, and it does take a lot of effort. It does take a lot of sort of planning and time to do it. But once you're on a roll, you know, you can kind of come up with a bit of a series or a theme. So like Gemma, you've been doing hours this month. You've come up with the sort of 12 days of Christmas, which has been, you know, it's really, it's when you think about it, I think, oh, that's an easy concept. You know, still takes a bit of effort to come up with the idea and then to execute it. But, you know, you've got essentially 12 video posts there from one idea. And I think that's the way to try and think about it. Another way is, we've always mentioned about evergreen content. So you create it once. So things like this podcast, blogs, anything like that, you can try and convert into content that you can use time and time again. Testimonials, again, is another really great way. It is hard to create video content, you know, with live people, but, you know, you can still do a little bit of background music, so some images. It doesn't have to be sort of like too much. So definitely, if you're not already on that, that's something to like to work on. So there's some really, really interesting things there. And we mentioned at the top there about kind of Twitter. And I'm not going to give Elon too many sort of like minutes on this podcast, because I think everything that has been said is being said right now. Yeah. But I think it's the end of that platform. I cannot see that platform really sort of like coming back. And I'm saying that as I really used to love Twitter. But as soon as he took it over, and as soon as he took it over, but as soon as he started making, in my opinion, on kind of like unethical changes, so allowing kind of the people that have been previously banned to have like a say, it just changes the whole field of social media, and it's just no longer a nice platform to be on. And there was a lot of fight already, you know, against kind of sort of people just saying what they want. And I just don't think you can have a platform. You can't just do that in real life, going out on the street and just shouting out whatever you want. It's just not permissible to do that, you know. And we're not talking just about having an opinion whether you like, you know, pecan pie or sort of, you know, roast dinners or something. We're talking about, you know, kind of like hate speech, you know, and, you know, misogynistic things. It's like, you can't, it is illegal to do that in pretty much most countries around the world. So what we need to understand is, like, it is not acceptable to do that anywhere. in the world, let alone just on a social media platform. It kind of sort of stimulates the demand that people can do that, and I don't think you can. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. That's my own personal opinion. What about you, Gemma?
Do you not think it's been like that for a long time?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Twitter has been like that for a long time.
Yes.
I think I talked on a previous podcast about my mum wanting to go on there. And I mean, she's in her 70s, and she said she loves Instagram. She won't go on Facebook because she used to be a teacher, so she doesn't want to be on there. She's on Instagram, but she's on Instagram privately. She doesn't post any pictures. It's more just to see what me, my sister, family abroad, things like that, what they're doing and stuff. But she wanted to have a look at Twitter and see what it was all about, because she was a big fan of Line of Duty. So she knew there were a lot of posts on there. And she said out of all of the ones that she's been on and looked at, she couldn't understand how people could say what they were saying on there and like get away with it. And I think, to be honest, Twitter's been like that for a number of years, even before Elon took it over.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it will go. I'm not sure. I've seen a lot of people saying they're leaving. I've seen a lot of people saying they're staying. I think it's difficult because there's different laws in the USA. You know, they've got the freedom of speech. It's the same with Facebook as well. I know I've tried for previous companies to get posts removed from pages that I've managed, that I would have considered hate speech or negative or not appropriate, and they've been refused to be taken down because it's their right to say what they want, you know. And it's not the same. It's not the same over here. We have different rules. But I don't know. I think for me, Twitter, out of all of them, is probably one of the worst ones when it comes to the negativity. And just some of the things that people say, whether or not it's to do with people's beliefs, whether or not it's to do with the government, whether or not it's to do with anything. So I think it'll be interesting to see what happens going forward. People have been desperate for an edit button that's been coming for, I don't know, the last 10 years, and it's just never happened.
And it's still not happened, which is really interesting. And with at kind of the time we're recording this, Elon put his poll out that, you know, does his users think he should resign? And the answer was like overwhelmingly by 57% yes. And all you got this morning was, oh, interesting, even though we do abide by the rules. And there's commentary in the background saying that, you know, his plan is that he was going to you know, kind of step aside anyway, and whether we will or we won't. So it's interesting because I think like the media are treating it a bit like a bit of a soap opera, and giving it lots of airtime, which I think he wants to kind of get people, you know, to get the brand out there, make it still relevant. But actually, I don't think it's in the wrong context. It's not in a positive context. So people that are leaving are generally either probably had enough of the platform or don't want to be associated with negativity, or maybe just kind of an excuse that actually take a social media break. This is a perfect excuse to, you know, get off the platform. And that's been, I think, if we're talking personally, that, you know, I've taken a bit of a break from Twitter. I used to do about maybe a couple of hours a day, you know, sort of every single day religiously for I don't know how many years. And I still dabble into Instagram like every now and again, a little bit on Facebook and a bit in LinkedIn, but I just been so busy.
I know you don't like TikTok.
I don't like TikTok. I find it an absolute waste of time. It's just and I think it's interesting because I was watching this video from Data Reportal,
right.
And it's what I've always said is that TikTok it's an entertainment. It's like people look on there for like fun videos. Do you know, there's nothing wrong with that. The channel isn't like for me personally, so I'm not saying it's a bad channel for everybody. It isn't. But I think that, I suppose in reflection, is that it is an entertainment channel, not dissimilar to YouTube. And it's interesting from, you know, what Data Reporter was suggesting, and actually that although it is social media, it is kind of more entertainment. So should it be classified, or should it be kind of more pitted against channels like Netflix or TV, because they're in that same sphere? And whereas Facebook, LinkedIn is all about really connecting with people. And I think maybe the use of TikTok is definitely like different. So, and if you listen to this and you think, well, I completely disagree, it'd be great. Like, it'd definitely be good to hear from you.
I mean, I do, because I think it's very similar to Instagram. I think it gives an insight into a brand's, like, behind the scenes, into what a brand's like, what the people are like. I think it shows the people. It can be done in many different ways. You don't even always have to have a person on there speaking. You can do it similarly to what you can use it Reels for on Instagram. But I do think it shows off a brand's personality, and I do think it gets the message across about a business. It's your opportunity to show behind the scenes. It's your opportunity to show people who you are, like almost like what you believe and what you stand for. Yeah, there's the fun element of it as well. But I don't know, I like it as a channel. I don't think I do enough on it as I should. But I mean, I do use it, and I do use it for a couple of businesses that I work with. And we kind of do a mix of things. We do a mix of like real videos. We do a mix of like photos, like different collages and stuff. We do some branded stuff. And I just think it shows people like the realness and the authenticity of the company and the business that can sometimes be hidden behind like a brand, that can sometimes be hidden behind, like almost behind a wall. You never really get to see the people. You never really get to understand that brand's personality, because all you see is the logo or the colours, or you read about what the business is, but you read about what it is from their eyes, from what they say, do you know what I mean, rather than from the people behind the scenes. And I think as long as staff aren't doing or saying things that they shouldn't, or that are going to cause problems for that brand, then I do think people do want realness. I do think they want authenticity. And one of the reports that I was looking at, this 14 trends for 23-26, which was on this Exploding Topics, which to be honest I hadn't come across before, but it was really, really interesting. Trust and authenticity was in the top 5. That was what they wanted. And I don't think you get that necessarily from LinkedIn, because you've got that very almost, I think LinkedIn's changing. I do think it's becoming a little bit more like Facebook, and the fact that you don't always necessarily see people with a headshot that you would have seen back in the day, where they've got a suit on, do you know what I mean, where they are careful what they say. But I do think that TikTok is probably one of the most used platforms by Gen Z. That was what they were saying. And they said that the use of TikTok is only going to increase. Marketers may lose some of their market share on popular platforms as new ones emerge. What new ones emerge, I don't know. I'm not sure. But it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think we've talked about it before, where I think brands are now going to really, really struggle, because really, unless you can afford to pay for an Instagram expert, a Facebook expert, a Twitter expert, a YouTube expert, then you're going to really, really struggle, because I think to get everything across all different channels is going to be hard for people, because there are so many out there that require so many different types of content. And the other big thing that I came across was social media crisis management is going to become a must-have, because brands are going to want that instant reply. You know, like the customer service chatbot that I talked about earlier. If they've got a complaint, they're going to want to answer straight away. I mean, I was on hold last night for about 35 minutes. I won't say the company name, but to try and find out where a package was that I'd allegedly signed for that was delivered. And it would have, I tried to use the chatbot. The chatbot didn't give me the response that I needed to, because it was an automated one. Whereas I think on a lot of social media channels, some of the big TV brands, some of the big internet providers and stuff, you do get a message straight away, whether or not you message them privately or publicly, you know, and I think that is going to be something that's going to continue because people do want an instant response.
I think the whole customer service thing, I think that's maybe a topic we can explore in our next podcast.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's a huge topic.
Yeah, and the customer service, I have to say, this year has been really poor. By a lot of businesses, it's been really, like, I'm talking like larger businesses here, not kind of the small, medium size, but large businesses, those with like call centres. And you just mentioned a good example there of maybe social media responses and chatbots where, you know, in the past, the level of service has actually been pretty good. This year, it's just been the excuse actually, we've still got COVID problems, or we're cutting back, or we've got staffing issues. It's just been more of an excuse actually. Do you know what? There's no excuse for bad service. You know, you're taking people's money, you're running your business, you still need to invest in customers. And there's so many good tools out there. So we won't go into...
I think we're 3 years down the line now from COVID, aren't we? Yeah. We're 3 years down, 4 years down the line from Brexit. So
absolutely.
These aren't excuses that should be being used anymore because good businesses should have pivoted almost immediately. Like, I know when I still worked for a company before I worked for myself, we went home straight away. We were given the tools that we needed to work from home. You know, we had the internet connection. We could do everything online. You could communicate virtually, you know. So really, there isn't, you can't use that excuse of COVID anymore because you've had 3 years to plan and make sure that your business is in a good position if there's another outbreak of it, if you need to find more drivers, if you need to have more customer service people, you know, I think it's a really poor excuse now.
Yeah. Going back to what you mentioned about like new platforms, we've seen, I've not used this platform myself, but Be Real, that's been like mentioned around sort of have you used that platform yourself, or you had a nose at it?
No, I haven't. I've looked at it because I remember Matt talking to us about it when we were at that event back in November at the North East Expo. I've seen a few people use it. I think the thing for me is the pressure of having to post that picture there and then within 60 seconds or whatever it is, because you don't know where you're going to be. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it sounds awful. You could be on the toilet. You know, it's like you could be in the shower. You could be. Do you know what I mean? You could, like, you could be in the doctor's. You could be, you know, you could be anywhere. You know, and the pressure of having to post that picture there and then, you might not have your makeup on, you might not have brushed your hair, you know. I think it's an interesting platform, and I can see like positives behind it, you know, because again, it's the realness, it's the authenticity, it's what people want to see, but you don't want to be caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. You know, and you've got to post that picture. I don't know that much. I don't know enough about it to what happens if you don't post the picture when you're supposed to. You know, I haven't really looked into it that much, but I think it'll be interesting to see how much of a take-up there is on that, because I know when I looked on the App Store, I don't think it was in the top 20 or the top 50.
No. And I think it's when you're going back to like new platforms we kind of have to remember, like, you know, some of these platforms that we have like now, like Facebook and that, have been out for nearly 20 years. So they've got these massive user bases. And so any like new platforms to come in, like it is, even people like TikTok is really, really challenging. One thing I was going to mention about TikTok just before we kind of like move on from this, that in the USA there is kind of a motion or some sort of a discussion going on about sort of banning sort of TikTok, and it has been I think it's been discussed here in the UK as well. I don't know about the EU, but it'd be interesting to see what happens with that next year, with a lot of kind of political events happening around the world. You know, if that does happen, that obviously then changes the social media landscape again. So potentially, like, you know, there's lots of changes ahead for these platforms. You need to keep fluid, and perhaps need to kind of, we've always said before, and we'll always say again, that you should only really be using social media for in kind of in line with your sort of business aims, with where your audience is, and where you want to get more people from. Yeah,
your beliefs as well, not just posting something just because everybody else is, and you think it makes you look good, so if you support a campaign, you support a campaign, but you support it because you genuinely believe in it. You're not just putting it out there just for the views. I think the other interesting thing is, and I don't know if you found this when you were in Saudi, but I know I did when I was in Dubai, because I have a few friends who live over there that I met when I was in America, and they aren't allowed to use things like WhatsApp and Messenger, because if they buy an iPhone over there, there are certain things that are disabled and they can't access. So the only way that they can is if they buy the iPhone out of the country. So there's a lad I went to university with in America who travels all over the world for work. He buys his iPhone in America, so he's got WhatsApp so he can use it. But if he got caught, he would get in trouble, because over there they have like one internet provider, one electricity provider, one telephone provider, so there's no competition. So everybody uses the same thing. It all belongs to them kind of thing. And I think possibly it's a little bit like that in China, because they have their own social media, don't they? They have their own, they do.
They have Weibo, so Weibo.
Like
so it's one of their I know they've got a couple of others, but that's one of the big ones, and that over there. It's and that's the thing. So we're talking this from a US point of view, European point of view, but if the brand that you're working for, if you're listening to this from a completely different country, you'll have your own social media platforms. I mean, look at like Japan, they've got Line, and the way that they use that platform is completely different. Same with Weibo, which is used as a search engine. So you can almost see maybe like the trends, even though like China being kind of the Chinese have been using that platform as not just a kind of understanding, like you following brands or following people about what they're doing, but using it as a search engine like we've been talking about. And you can see that those trends are now coming into platforms in this on this kind of side of the world as well. So how we're using these channels is also something we have to sort of bear in mind as well, which we've already kind of previously kind of talked about. So summing up here just on the social side, so make sure that the channels that you're using are relevant. If not, maybe think about sort of trying to ditch them. Think about maybe have a look at your competitors, maybe do a SWOT analysis about what they're doing, the type of content they're putting on there. Look at how your top customers, clients, followers, look how they're using the platform. Maybe even have a chat to them. You could do some focus groups if you're a very big brand. Just having listen to different podcasts like doing here, listen to other sort of larger sort of marketing influencers to see what they think, and then come up with a new plan for 2023. But I think that like you mentioned, like LinkedIn, you've got a much more sort of business like presence, but it is changing, and it is, like you say, getting much more genuine. So it's that type of content, sort of getting less corporate and being more kind of approachable and friendly, breaking down those barriers is definitely not going to be sort of going away. It kind of leads us on to a little bit really into communities, and there's something I've kind of felt quite strongly about. This maybe goes back to why Facebook is still one of the most widely used social media platforms, and that because it is really a giant community. So you've got individuals, you've got business pages on there, but then you've also got groups. And certainly over the last couple of years, I've seen the rise of platforms like Discord and Twitch. These are massive communities, and they tend to be based around sort of gaming or sort of music, sort of DJs, entertainment, even popular music artists as well. But there's definitely a bigger trend now where some of the it's not that sort of organizations and businesses are coming off social media, but they're starting to build their own communities. And I think it's a really a neat trend to have, that you get to know your users, that you don't really have to rely on things like algorithms and social media platforms anymore about when something's going on, because you can create your own events. You've got your own followers, although you're not saying that you own them, but you've got a dedicated following there. And then if you do sort of want to promote something like a new event or an offer or some new products or services or whatever it may well be, that you can rely on things like notifications in apps and things like that to kind of like help you sort of get help increase your reach, help increase engagement, which has been really difficult on some of the other platforms in the last couple of years. So communities, I think, is really important to understand. And there's one of the aims of social media really was always about sort of building communities and brands, and that should be looking at engagement, not just about posting content, but looking about comments and likes and trying to build this sort of genuine following, get away from numbers, the number of followers that we've got. So building the communities on these other platforms might be something that you might want to kind of like think about. And there's some links down in the show notes below, but there's some really good tools that you can have a look at. So things like ConvertKit, Gumroad, those are really quite low cost, cheap tools for sort of building communities. Discord, as I mentioned, Twitch, as I mentioned. And one of the other big sort of trends over the last couple of years has been membership sites, which Gumroad, if you don't know, it's something to have a look at. But you can do membership sites on Shopify, Squarespace, Wix. If you're looking to do a side hustle, or you're a freelancer, or if you're a business thinking, what else can we do that's a little bit different, then membership sites are something great to look at, because you've got the community side, but also it's a way sort of like building sort of consistent revenue into your business, as long as you're providing relevant and good quality sort of content. And it's, as I say, it's a way that you can engage directly with your followers, which is the whole point of socials. I don't know if you've got anything you want to add to that, Gemma.
No, I don't think so. I think the good thing about Facebook is your community aspect. You've got, obviously, you can do your audio rooms, you can do your live events, you can arrange events. You can also upload materials if you want to, so people can download PDFs.
Yeah.
You can have closed groups, you can have open groups. I think out of all of them that's out there, for me, that's probably one of the better ones. And unless really you sell something that you've got to, in the UK, sell on a website rather than through Facebook, you can still have your Facebook shop on there and link off to like a mini website if you need to. But to be honest, depending on what kind of business you are and what you do, if you're like a training business, or you were building just a community for whatever, you could just use Facebook, really, because all the tools are there. I mean, with Twitter, you've got Twitter Spaces, but I don't see many people using them. I don't see many people joining them. I didn't see that Clubhouse app take off.
No.
As much as what everybody said it was going to. And I remember clicking into a couple of rooms because you sent me a link, and thinking to myself, well, how do you know when to speak? Do you raise your hand? Do you just cut somebody off? How does it all work? But I think at least with Facebook, you've got more control. Again, Twitter, people can just join, and I think you tend to be listening more just to people talking rather than having like a proper discussion. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens with all channels really over the next 2 to 3 years. And I think it'll be interesting to see what brands do. Will they try and maintain a presence on everything? Will they just focus on one or two? Will they just focus on one? I don't know. I'm not really sure how it's going to go, to be honest. I think it's interesting. I think it'll be exciting to see what happens, and watch what comes out of the next 2 or 3 years.
Well, just a couple of quick minutes we're just going to talk about is one of the things that game changers could sort of change things has been the metaverse. And we haven't got time to go through the whole of what the metaverse kind of like means. And part of the reason is that because it's not really properly established as yet. I mean, you've got Microsoft, you've got their HoloLens, you've got kind of the Meta version of their kind of, I think, really kind of the old school sort of VR stuff, and you've got the PlayStation VR. But the metaverse really is all about the future, about this whole thing about bringing or sort of creating virtual worlds. So I think that's definitely going to be a game changer. And I suppose kind of reflecting back at the beginning of the year that, we were hopefully going to start seeing the emergence of what the metaverse was about this time in the year. But that's definitely not going to happen. No, there's a lot of problems. And interestingly, I think that they're trying to pull up, well, I can only from an outside bystander viewpoint, but it seems that the challenge is that what we think is quite simple concept is actually quite difficult. It's cost a lot of money. Yeah. Maybe what they're trying to do is just too ambitious, and it'd be interesting to see what Apple and PlayStation come up. We've got the PlayStation VR 2 coming out next year. We've got the Apple headset going to be coming out like next year at some point. And I don't think it's going to be anything too different to what in our minds, I think we've seen these concept images, but I think all it's going to be is talking heads and maybe in a virtual world. And then I think it's going to be understanding really from users what they want to see from them. And I think it's a good approach if that's what some of the businesses are going to do. I think that it's not a bad thing, because I think actually the users need to kind of say, well, we want to be able to do this, we want to be able to do that, and then take those ideas and then build on it. I don't think they've got enough. I don't know if it seems the developers may just be sort of trying to do things that we just maybe not ready for. It's interesting to see, but there's a lot of manufacturers are now kind of like pulling out of the space. It's just way too much money, and maybe just you can't get that return on your investment. You can't guarantee it because the amount of money that you have to charge for the actual equipment or the service is whether people are going to be willing to pay for it or not. So
I think that's what I was going to say. I think it's whether or not what do you need for it? Do you know? Do you need to do you need to get a completely different computer? Do you need to get a new television? I know I've seen a lot of negative things over the last, I think, 2 to 3 weeks about WhatsApp and being able to create these avatars that people think are really, really freaky and are not really sure how they're all going to work and stuff. I haven't looked at it. I haven't looked at them, to be honest. I'm curious to look at them. I just haven't had time yet. But I know I've seen a couple of articles about them that you can create them now on WhatsApp within the app. I haven't seen anybody do it that I know personally, but I'm curious to see how it all works. And as well, just with the world going forward, will people have the disposable income to be able to, if you do need to purchase a new computer that looks totally different, if you do need to purchase a completely different telly, because years ago, 3D tellies were the next big thing and they didn't take off. Do you know what I mean? So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. Well, we're come to the end of the time of this podcast. It's a lot longer one, so if you're still with us, we're really grateful that you could sort of listen in to this hopefully really interesting and entertaining discussion. These are all our own point of views, but it'd be great to hear from you if you've got
a caption. Disclaimer.
So if you've got anything different to add, like you think we're completely wrong, or there's something we've missed, like do contact us. Our contact details are in the show notes below. Otherwise, we wish you happy holidays and have a fantastic start to 2023. And we'll be sure to bring you that podcast on customer service next. Take care then. Bye for now.
See you later.